Welcome to the Justice Room. Your life, your rights, your options. Experience and learn from discussions with legal professionals and other experts about the law, its challenges, and how it could affect you. Here at the Justice Room. Welcome to the Justice Room. Welcome to the Justice Room. This is Jay Jacome, the host of the Justice Room. Today we have a special guest with us. We've invited Candidate Judge Amir Ladan, who is running for Seminole County Judge for Group 5. He has come to the Justice Room to talk a little bit about his experience, his knowledge, and why he's running for Candidate Judge. Thank you for coming on the show today, Mr. Ladan.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you. As you know, our shows are typically not quite this type, but I've pre-populated a series of questions for you. So for our listening audience, for our viewing audience, typically I'm not looking down at paper, but today we've made some exceptions because these are rather unique, and we wanted to be sure that we were all prepared for the show.
Sure, I appreciate it.
Okay. The Justice Room has invited several of the candidates on our show to talk about their skills, their qualifications, and experience. All the candidates will also answer general questions about themselves and why they are seeking the appointment to be a candidate judge or to be a judge. The Justice Room has no professional, personal, or has endorsed any of the candidates that are guest speakers here on the Justice Room. First question. Tell us briefly about your background, about yourself, education, family. Although we're going to cover a little bit of this on the show, just if you could just give us a quick little cap of your experience.
Sure. Well, I've been an attorney in Florida since 1998. Went to University of Miami School of Law. In terms of my background, I've been in Seminole County for about 26 years. Moved down from a suburb of Chicago when I was a kid. Went to middle school here, high school here, Rollins College for undergrad, majored in politics. After Miami, I went straight into prosecuting, worked for Lawson Lamar here in Orlando for 3 years, and then started my own practice about 9 years ago.
Oh, okay. Tell us a little bit about your legal career.
I can do that. The first three at the state attorney's office, I spent a very brief period of time prosecuting in county court, which is misdemeanors and traffic offenses, DUIs, those types of things. I spent nearly 2 years in felony court at the tail end. I'm handling everything except for what the special prosecution units handled. They have, the capital murder cases were all handled by the special unit that handled homicide. Right. And then, of course, sex offenses were handled by the sex crimes unit. But the trial units handled everything else. So we had a good opportunity to try all types of cases. And then in between those two, I did a year of juvenile prosecution. Okay. And after I left the state attorney's office, started up my own firm, Carson and Ladan, a little over 9 years ago. Okay. And when we first started up, we did a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of getting our feet wet, right. Seeing what we like, right. Paying bills, obviously. Sure. And so we did a good split. And at one point, it was almost 50-50 civil criminal. Okay. But as we got busier and more involved, it became clear that specializing was, or at least focusing on a practice area was smart, and so we kind of gravitated back to criminal because that's what we did.
Okay. So your firm with Carson Ladan, owned by
Keith Carson's my partner.
Okay.
Right.
And so you primarily you did work in civil cases, but you primarily focused on criminal type cases.
Yeah, I'd say right now, as we sit here, it's probably almost exclusively criminal. There's still a few civil matters here and there that we'll handle for family or friends or old clients that we've had for 8-10 years. But other than that, we try to stick to what we know well. So. Okay.
Now, tell us a little bit. Being in private practice, what was one of the most interesting or significant cases that you've handled in your career?
The one that comes to mind is one that's actually not that recent, but when I first left the state, I had a judge here locally ask me to take on a case under a special appointment. And what that means, for the listeners that may not be familiar with criminal cases, is if when you have multiple people charged with the same offense, right. and they're not in a position to retain their own attorney, the judge will appoint a public defender to represent one, and then they'll have conflict attorneys representing the others. And I wasn't a conflict attorney per se, but the judge knew me because I used to prosecute in front of him.
Okay.
And the case, without disclosing anything that's attorney-client,
yeah.
These things are all public. You can look it up. But essentially the case was a second-degree murder case. There were 5 folks that were charged. My client was the only female. And without boring you with the details of it, the reason I felt that it really suits this question is this, and that is that, I think a lot of us go to law school because we believe in the justice system.
Right.
And this case really spoke to that for me personally. This is someone that through a year of discovery, depositions, research, you name it, it came very clear to me, had no involvement in this case. And after a year of going through this process, finally the prosecutor agreed, and on day 3 of her trial actually dismissed the case against my client. So that was a relief for one. It's a rarity in our line of work to have someone that's 100% innocent of the charges. There's always shades of culpability and responsibility.
Right.
But this young lady was truly innocent of it, and as a young defense attorney at that point, 4 years out of law school, I had a lot of stress on me that we'd take care of her and do the right thing. And so for me, it was a very significant case, and I was pleased that the prosecutor finally realized after that point that the case shouldn't go forward. So
yeah, and there's not often. I'm also a criminal defense investigator outside of the justice room, but it's not often that you get the pleasure to work, or even an opportunity to work on a case in where your client is no longer involved in the case itself, and I'll leave it at that to keep it simple. But what did you enjoy the most at this point in being an attorney?
Well, I think that being able to help people, one thing that from an idealistic standpoint, I think a lot of attorneys get into the law for different personal reasons, but a lot of times it relates back to the concept of justice, equity in the court system, and those types of things. And people might think that that's just a theory, but what we see on a day-to-day basis is that you can have a meaningful impact on justice, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're sitting on, whether you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, you have those opportunities. And they're not only personally gratifying, but when you see someone going through a difficult situation and you can help them through that in some form or fashion, and simultaneously see that justice is being done and that society as a whole is being served, it doesn't get much better than that as an attorney.
Okay. We very briefly already talked a little bit about how long you've been in private practice, but how long have you been with Carson Ladan? How long has it been?
Actually, May 2nd was our 9th anniversary. So we left, Keith and I were partners at the state attorney's office. We left the state in May of, 2001, and have been in private practice together ever since then. We now have 2 associates, and we office out of 3 locations. Our main office is in Orlando, satellite office in Longwood, and then another office in Kissimmee, about 2 blocks from the courthouse there.